Boa noite, pessoal. Sejam bem-vindos a mais uma live aí do BRF Futebol, seu canal de fantasy no Brasil. Aqui recebendo um convidado especialíssimo, Matt Harmon. Acho que todo mundo que acompanha fantasy, seja no Brasil ou todo mundo, o mundo inteiro conhece o Matt Harmon. Atualmente está no Yahoo Fantasy, tem o projeto dele, que é o Reception Perception, que qualquer fã de fantasy conhece. A gente vai fazer alguns sorteios, então fiquem ligados, deixe seus comentários aqui para participar com a gente, suas perguntas para o Matt, que ele vai gostar. Esse é o carro-chefe da gente, é o Matt aqui, o Matt Harmon. Então deixe as perguntas para eles, aquelas lembranças de sempre, no começo dos nossos vídeos. Assine o BRF Futebol, lá você tem conteúdo exclusivo, com a assinatura semestral você ganha a segunda edição do livro do Fantasy Futebol, e isso na assinatura anual, desculpa, além de uma mentoria com a gente, na semestral você ganha acesso exclusivo ou antecipado a alguns artigos especiais, principalmente do Ruizão aí, o cara da gente, e também o Draft Kit. Apresentar o pessoal que está aqui com a gente. Primeiro, os brasileiros que falam português. O Caião, presida. Fala aí, Caio.
E aí, Sérgio, boa noite. A gente está aí com essa live. É um prazer ter um dos melhores do mundo do fantasy com a gente aqui hoje, Matt Harmon. A gente tem muito que aprender. Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to have you here.
I am so gassed up to talk to you guys. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate your presence here, man. O nosso chefão daqui, o Ruizão, nosso produtor aí de conteúdos exclusivos, especialmente em analítica. Aí, fala aí, Rui. Boa noite.
Boa noite, Sérgio. Boa noite, galera. Tudo bom? Matt, it's a pleasure to have you here. We are eager to learn a lot from you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Hey, you and I have been going back on Twitter for a long time now. I've been following your work, and you're the man. You're absolutely crushing it. So thank you for kind of being the connection here, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very good.
Os outros dois aí vocês já conhecem de outras lives. O Cainho. Fala aí, Caio.
E aí, beleza, pessoal? Estamos aqui de novo. Been a huge fan of Matt Harmon, so really excited to have him here. Hope to learn a lot today, and so does everyone.
O outro é o Derek, nosso representante direto de Manchester. Acabou de comemorar o título em inglês, aí vem aqui participar da live com a gente. Fala aí, Derek. Calma aí, Derek. Você tá no mudo, Derek.
Sempre assim.
Agora
foi. Primeiramente, bem-vindo a todo mundo. Thank you, Matt, for having us here today, or in this case tonight. But yes, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
É isso aí, pessoal. E lembrando que a gente vai sortear 3 prêmios aqui hoje. O primeiro prêmio vai ser o livro do Fantasy Futebol. O segundo é uma assinatura semestral do nosso canal, do BRF Futebol. E também um lugar especial no Scott Fishbowl, para quem quiser participar lá dessa liga que só participa fera. É isso aí. A gente vai sortear no decorrer da live. Para participar do sorteio tem que ser inscrito no canal do YouTube, isso é importante. Tem que ter dado o retweet lá no tweet lá do nosso canal que a gente deixou. E também está presente aqui na live. Então deixe seus comentários, comenta aí para poder participar da live, do sorteio. E é isso, agora vamos começar então conosco. Nosso apresentador em inglês, Derek. Let's go, Derek.
Let's begin.
Everybody said thanks to Matt, except for me. So thank you here for coming here, Matt. Now it's my time.
Thank you for having me.
It's perfect then. So shall we start? Matt, firstly, tell us a little bit about yourself. How do you start playing fantasy, and how you end up in this industry?
Yeah, no, good place to start it off. It's funny because I get this question a lot, and back when I was in high school, I think I was a junior, sophomore in high school. My best friend. He's going to be the best man at my wedding here next year. He said to me, he's like, look, man, we need like a 12 person, because obviously we're playing 12 team leagues. We need a 12 person here for this fantasy football league. Do you want to do it? And I was like, no chance. I'm not playing fantasy football. That sounds stupid. Well, lo and behold, I did end up playing in that league and really loved it. I was just like the type of person, and I probably am still this type of person where like once I get into something and I really love it. Like I really sink my teeth in. I become, like obsessed with it. And that was definitely me with football and with fantasy football. As a result, I started playing Madden a ton, and like I memorized basically every roster. I could tell you, my dad would like take me to parties or whatever and be like, hey, who's the right tackle for the Chiefs or whatever, some player I had no business knowing. And I could tell you right off the bat, you can look it up on the internet, and I was usually right more often than not. So just became, I don't know, obsessed, fixated with football basically. And how I ended up getting into the industry was I just kind of decided, life took me through a few circuitous twists and turns there. As I got older, as I graduated from college, decided to kind of put aside every other path I was going to take. And I wanted to turn that passion that I had for football into a job. Of course, like not knowing really how you do that. I had had no connections, no media affiliations, obviously did not play in the NFL. So it was basically just let's start a website and see what happens. And the story kind of evolved and unfolded from there, developed reception perception, and the rest is sort of history from then on.
Nice. So when it comes to reception perception, tell us a little bit more about this project. What do you like the most? What do you hate the most? Everything.
Well, I mean, if I hate anything about it, it's just how much time it takes. It does take a lot of time, but listen, good work it does take time, and I mean, I do feel very bullish that what I'm doing is worthwhile and is worth the time. It's a difference between slow cooking a nice piece of meat in a smoker over a grill as opposed to microwaving food. Like, sure, you could microwave something and it'll be ready right away, but sometimes good things take a little longer. Quality does end up taking time. So if there's one thing I don't like about it, it does take up a lot of my time, but it is something I love to do as well. The thing that I really like about it is I think it has accomplished the goal that I set out to accomplish when I developed the series, which was essentially I wanted to answer the question, my biggest question about football, which was, we know that wide receivers are so inherently dependent on other positions in order to accrue production. Even just to get a target, so many things have to go right for that wide receiver. The only thing that the wide receiver can control is how often do they run good routes, how often do they get separation from the guys covering them. Really, I wanted to answer the question is, when we're sitting at home on Sundays watching games, what the hell are those wide receivers doing when they run off the screen? You hear announcers say, these guys are all open, but the quarterback can't find them, or this quarterback's got nobody to throw to because everybody's covered. But I wanted to try to go in and really put a hard percentage to that. So that's when I developed the methodology to track game film and go in and spend all those hours watching wide receivers and tracking exactly what they're doing, independent of the variable of the quarterback and all the surrounding things. So really the thing I like about it the most is I like to go in and give credit where it's due to these great receivers who sometimes you might not know about yet because they haven't broken out in fantasy, or you might not know how good they are because their quarterback stinks or they're in a bad offense, something like that. That's really my favorite part of the series.
That's perfect. And one thing that's really amazing during your journey in creating those reception perception, and also work in the industry in general, is meeting new people and few friends that you end up having in the way. So in a more personal level, tell a little bit or comment a little bit about them. Some guys that, for example, James are with you in the reception, and so goes on. So feel free to.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the funny part about my my career is, again, I shouldn't be really doing any of this, right? Like I said, back then, starting out, and I'm still a nobody, but back then I really was just a literal nobody. I didn't, like I said, didn't have any connections to media, didn't have any connections to teams or anything like that. Certainly was not out there with a bunch of sources or anything. So for me, it was really starting at ground zero, but building reception perception over time. Like you mentioned, I made a lot of connections and a lot of friends in the industry, to the point that, when I was writing for Football Guys, which, by the way, was for me such a huge win because I grew up listening to the Football Guys podcast with Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammy. So for Sigmund Bloom to reach out to me and bring me to Football Guys was like such a huge win. And the fact that he and I have become such good friends, and I really view him as like a mentor, I value that relationship. So that relationship brought me to Football Guys. And then, further along, I was alerted that, the NFL Network was like looking for basically a fantasy editor, fantasy writer to do some work for them during the season. And I had no business getting that job because, believe me, I was not qualified for that, right? Like I just tossed my resume into a giant stack, a digital stack of resumes. Probably hundreds and hundreds of people applied for that job, but I knew Alex Gelhard there, like he was familiar with Reception Perception. He had read the work before, so he pulled my name out of the stack, and he and Marcus Grant interviewed me over the phone when I was living all the way across the country in Virginia. And, you know, those guys have ended up becoming like some of my best friends because like I got that job. We became really good friends, and, you know, met Matt Franciscovich franchise. We started doing the fantasy hipster stuff together. He's still one of my best friends, and obviously met James there as well. Now James is a business partner with me at Reception Perception and has helped me kind of grow this brand to something I never could have dreamed it being. And so, yeah, you're right. You're totally right. That relationships and friendships and the people that you meet along the way are really crucial to everybody's own individual journey. And, you know, that's not to even speak about a lot of the athletes and players who I've gotten to know on a more personal level too. And that's really cool as well, to see these guys as like actual human beings beyond just, numbers on a spreadsheet or something like that.
It's amazing, no less. It's just they're awesome in a bunch of different levels. So right now, before we start with the first raffle, I'll just ask you one last question before we have this little raffle. So, what league format do you usually do you prefer to play today? So
yeah, I mean, listen, I love. Oh yeah. No, so honestly, at this point, like I love drafting best ball teams. Like I feel like if you're not playing if you're not drafting best ball teams right now, like do you even really like fantasy? You know what I mean? It's so it's so much fun. It's like it's fun to be here in the off season and still be able to draft teams and compete with really very dedicated players, right? Because if you're throwing, even if it's $3, $5, whatever, at a best ball league, you care in some way enough to throw your literal cash at it. That's a good sign that you're competitive and you know what you're doing, right? So I love drafting best ball teams, especially this time of year, because you also, as an analyst, you really put your own takes to the fire, right? Like, sure. And I was talking about this with James on our Reception Perception show, that at times, I think to myself, I like Kenny Golladay, right? In a sense of like wide receiver 21 or wide receiver 24, wherever he's going in best ball drafts right now. Depending on where you're drafting, I like on paper, I like that price. But then at the same time, every time I'm in one of my best ball drafts, I'm looking at his name around guys like Tyler Lockett or Cooper Kupp or Brandon Ayuk or Deontay Johnson, any of the guys that are going in that same range, and I always end up wanting to click those guys over Kenny Golladay. So clearly, I probably don't like him at that price as much as I thought I did just on paper. And I think that's one reason, just from like a mental stimulation part of it, it really takes your whatever opinions you might have and get it really puts them like, put your own feet to the fire, which I think is important if you're covering the game and you're having opinions on it. It's nice to actually have a little skin in it, and it really helps you kind of focus on what you actually think about players.
Perfect. So are you pass the ball to Sérgio, and he'll continue with the raffle? Vai lá, Sérgio, tá mutado.
Esqueci aí, foi mal, galera. Boa. Acho que quem vai fazer o sorteio é o Caio ou o Rui?
O Ruizão.
Eita.
Vamos lá, Ruizão.
O primeiro sorteio vai
Explica aí
ser
como você vai fazer esse sorteio aí, Ruizão, por favor.
Do Fantasy Book.
livro do Fase. Primeiro a gente vai pegar os nomes da galera, colocar aqui no sorteador. A galera que já se inscreveu, já comentou aí. Aí a gente vai pegar alguns nomes e jogar aqui. Alguns não, né? Todo mundo que mandou.
Então é interessante que todo mundo comente, viu, pessoal? Quem está assistindo aí, comente, porque para entrar não basta estar assistindo a live, porque a gente não vai saber que vocês estão inscritos, tá?
Também.
Isso aí.
Vamos pegar os nomes aqui da galera que chegou. Sérgio, tem lista aqui no sorteador que você usou?
Tem.
Vamos conversar um pouquinho com o Harmon, Derek, aí, enquanto a Rom pergunta, a gente perguntou que tipo de jogo ele pergunta, a gente vai perguntar agora como é que ele gosta nos redrafts, Dynasty Leagues, how do you like to play, Superflex or other kinds of leagues, what do you like?
Yeah, no, I like Superflex a lot because I just like any league that's going to bring more starting players into the equation. That to me is crucial because, you know, even if you're obviously tempted to throw the quarterback into the Superflex spot, and I think that's obviously what you should do, just getting more starting players into the lineup is crucial. I think it brings up the skill level of yourself as a player, as a fantasy gamer. I think that's important. And in dynasty leagues too, I'm trying to find ways that, you know, quarterback is not just a complete afterthought. Like especially in dynasty, obviously there is, you know, in redraft, it's, you know, you just kick the quarterback can down the road. You late round quarterback, that whole thing. But even in dynasty, there's a temptation to just not really get invested in one quarterback because you can just continue to replace guys. But Superflex obviously changes that. So I really like that format. You know, my main dynasty league right now is a Superflex league. And, you know, it also kind of makes you balance the age question of quarterbacks better and everything like that. And I also think too that we are seeing sort of a changing of the guard when it comes to the quarterback position, and guys that are high-end efficient passers, but also electric as runners. And I'm thinking about obviously Josh Allen, who is on my dynasty team, by the way. So shout out to me. I'm thinking about guys like that, right? Those players, and you know, the Kyler Murrays, the Lamar Jacksons, like those guys can sort of start to change the mold of your traditional starting quarterback that puts up big numbers as a passer, but also has juice as a runner, or vice versa, has that juice as a runner, but also puts up really solid passing numbers. Like whatever you think about Lamar Jackson as a pure passer, the numbers are pretty good. Like from a fantasy angle, like the numbers are pretty solid all the way around. So yeah, I think those guys are starting to sort of change the discussion even more in Superflex, where there's that additional value at the quarterback position. And I think that's important because I think it's been too easy for too long to just cobble together options at the quarterback spot.
And what do you think about the Tyrant Premium? Do you think, for example, the plus half PPR or 1 PPR, that depends on the league, brings the position in a new light, for example?
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I've kind of railed against recently is like people that want to do away with starting positions. Like, I mean, come on. We did this video in season called the Fantasy Football Survival Kit, where folks send in tweets, send in submissions of things. And, you know, at the end of the year, I always field the question of what do you want to change about fantasy going forward? And the amount of people that just want to do away with tight ends, like, let's just do away with tight end. Like, it's too hard to predict. Just like how people have done it with kicker too, and kicker, whatever, that's fine because it's just different, right, than fantasy. But don't push it with like trying to take tight ends out of fantasy football. Like just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Okay, and like if you want to, I relate it basically to like if you want to pay for convenience, then you don't fly and coach, right? Like if you don't want to fly and coach with the rest of us normal folks, I guess you pay up for first class or whatever. So you pay for the convenience. If you want to pay for convenience at tight end, then you got to spend a second, third round pick or whatever on Travis Kelce, George Kittle, or Darren Waller or something. So, yeah, I think if we're making tight end premium more of a thing, hopefully that does elevate the position to at least kind of equalize it, or make people just not want to completely forget about it. Because, you know, there are guys this year like Tyler Higbee that I think is really interesting and could potentially not become one of those elite tight ends, but it could at least be a solution beyond those players that isn't going too high right now. I actually think he's a guy that I have ended up picking quite a lot in best ball leagues right now. So yeah, I mean, listen, if you want to customize your league and make it interesting and you want to bring up, you know, tight end premium, super flex, whatever, I'm in. As long as you're making more players playable and not fewer, I'm in on whatever you want to do.
Okay. I'm just waiting here to Rui ask about IDP. Do you play IDP league? Who is our specialist of IDP?
I hate to do this to my guy, but no. I've never played in any IDP leagues, and honestly, I don't know that I've got the guts for it. To be straight up. I mean, that's like, it's just so much more. No, that's not true. Actually, I did play. I'm lying to you. I'm lying to you guys right now here on live internet TV. I did play in one like, single, like you have just one other defensive player with your offensive guys. So everybody obviously just drafts like middle linebackers or whatever because they get a bunch of tackles. I think I had John Beeson during one of his big years with the Panthers. So that tells you how long ago that I played in like a one defensive player league. So not even like I'm drafting a bunch of defensive players. It was just the one to go along with the rest of the offense. So I hate to admit this to you, but it's the truth.
We won't force you into that.
Until you start to talk about polemic things, let's talk about Scott Fishbowl format for this year. What do you think about?
I was gonna ask exactly about that.
Kickers and flags. What do you think about it? Go on, Sérgio.
I mean,
no, it's the same subject.
Good luck.
Are you going to draft a kicker?
Am I going to? I mean, listen, if I got to do it, I got to do it. But I'd really rather not. I am not going to be one of these people out here though. Like there's a lot of mainstream, like big name fantasy analysts that are like really railing against the whole kicker thing and like, just totally want to remove kickers. I'm not into that. If you want to have kickers in your league, kick away, baby. Like I'm fine with that. I'm not like live and let live when it comes to the kicker thing is basically how my philosophy on it.
What about in Scott Fishbowl? This year's kickers are allowed. But are you drafting anyone? I see some people aren't. What about you?
I probably will end up doing it because you know what I don't want to do, man? I don't want to be out there on the Scott. I don't want to be out there on the Scott Fishbowl waiver wire combing for kickers. That's a tough life. And I know I'm going to be in a lot. I'm going to be in a lot of leagues this year. I'm in a lot of leagues every year, and I hate to be the guy that like forgets about like Scott Fishbowl and I draft my team in July and then like I end up looking at it in week 3. I'm like, what the hell? Why did I ever like any of these players? So I'm going to try to lock me in a good kicker. I can already tell you that because I'm not trying to play that kicker waiver wire there.
How many leagues do you play during a year?
So say that one more time.
How many
leagues?
Play?
Yeah.
Oh God, too many. I will tell you, I've gotten it down though to a point now where I usually keep it under 8. But like I used to be up at like 15, 20. That's like disgusting. Like try talking about that to somebody that like doesn't, isn't in our like fantasy industry bubble. Like, you guys get it. I get it. Your viewers get it. Like we can end up because just of our connections on Twitter and like people within the industry, we end up playing in too many leagues. But, like trying to explain to like my fiance or whatever, like why I'm in so many fantasy leagues. She's like, what do you talk? Why? You don't even, she's like, you don't even have that many. You don't have that many friends. How are you in this many fantasy leagues? It's not like that.
And can you imagine just to keep tracking of all those leagues, all those teams, and you start confusing yourself where you think you have some player and it's, in a different league or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's like, sure, I have Julio Jones in this league, but Julio Jones is probably stomping me out in some other league, so it's all negligible at some point.
It's all balanced.
Also, there's a balance to the universe. Also, by the way, like when you have that many leagues, you do end up like by week 4 being like, well, this team's done. Like I'm just gonna stop. I can't care anymore, right? Because like I know by now at this point, like 3 of my main guys are already injured. I didn't pick up week 1 or week 2's hottest waiver running back. I'm dead in the water anyways. I might as well devote my resources to a league I might actually be able to win.
Fair enough. Talking about Julio Jones. What do you think about his trade? Where do you project, or if your feeling, your guts relate to the best landing spot? That's
so. No. It's a great question. Obviously, it's like top of everyone's mind right now. Because there are so many. Listen, every single NFL team should be at least picking up the phone and like seeing what the asking price is, because Julio Jones is that kind of player, right? I think if I had to pick a favorite landing spot, there's a very good chance. That he gets traded to it. Like the Titans would be fun. Although I really do want like AJ Brown to get all the targets, but I think they probably can't really. Yeah, yes, please. I think we're all in on that. Listen, you guys asked for one spoiler before we got started here on Marquise Brown. I'll give you this one instead. When AJ Brown hits the Reception Perception website next Monday, it is going to be electric. People are going to be excited about how good this guy really, really was in 2020, and potentially how good he could be going forward. So we can all get excited about that. So actually, let's not send Julio Jones to the Titans so that we can get AJ Brown wide receiver 1 overall season. Instead, I actually think he'd be a great fit, and I don't know if this is going to happen. There hasn't been any real rumors about this, but I do think he would be a really fun fit with the LA Chargers. You look at this team right now, they've got guys for Herbert, right? But they're kind of top heavy. Keenan Allen's there. Austin Eckler's a stud. Those are two of my favorite players at the wide receiver and running back position, respectively. I still like Mike Williams as a big play, downfield, contested catch guy, but I mean, like Jalen Guyton was top 20 in routes run last year. He was catching darts from Justin Herbert. Remember during Kyler Murray's rookie year when we would say, like, after they made that DeAndre Hopkins trade, everybody went back and, I mean, I know I did this, like looked at the highlights of Damiere Byrd, like catching some downfield heaters from Kyler Murray and being like, yeah, okay, now that's going to be DeAndre Hopkins on the other end of those passes. Let's take those Jalen Guyton darts from Justin Herbert last year and put Julio Jones on the other end of him. I think that would be the type of move that they could make. They could make it work from a salary perspective, number one. They could make it work from a draft pick perspective. They've got enough resources, whatever. This is the time to go all in on your young quarterback. That offense would suddenly look that much more intriguing with another weapon there alongside what they've already got in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler.
I'm sure that everybody will draft Jalen Guyton now, today.
Yeah. Feel bad for Barry and Jalen Guyton there, but it was just to make a point.
What about Calvin Ridley? If Julio leaves, what do you think? By top 5, top 10?
Yeah, I've already got like my rankings kind of adjusted to if Julio Jones, like I'm assuming he gets traded, right? So I've got Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 5 right now, exactly as you said it. I've got Jones at like wide receiver 17, just because with Julio Jones, he's not going to go anywhere that's an upgrade for fantasy. Like even in that spot, even in that spot there, like going to the Chargers with a good quarterback, it's not going to be the same as playing for a team in Atlanta that should be throwing the ball a lot, and also that he's got a built-in chemistry with the quarterback and Matt Ryan that he's played with forever. So there's really no spot where Jones is going to get that upgrade, but I think Calvin Ridley would instantly be a top 5 receiver in fantasy. I think he's that kind of guy. I think when you look at him in reception perception, he's sort of on the same career path as a guy like Stephon Diggs, and maybe at some point the targets and the offensive efficiency intersects for him as well, and he could have that elite type of season, top 5 like we saw from Diggs last year.
Talking about feel free.
It's a little bit. Let's do the raffle.
Oh yeah, sure. I was almost forgetting.
We're excited, but just this. Boa, Sérgio. Rui.
Opa. Vamos lá, galera. Compartilhar aqui a tela com vocês. Olha aí.
Não estamos vendo só agora.
Pronto. Tivemos aqui comentários de 19 pessoas. Aqui os nomes de vocês. Todo mundo que já comentou na live. E a gente vai puxar um nome aqui para levar o nosso primeiro prêmio. E rufem os tambores. E Sami Scarpellini. É o nosso vencedor aí do livro.
Beleza.
Go
on, Derek.
Right. I was speaking when you talk about targets. There's one guy that is really interesting, at least for me. That's Deontay Johnson from the Steelers. Why do you think he's so underrated in fantasy?
I think because people get really hung up on drops. Number one, that's one issue that I'm not too concerned about, because number one, with drops, like I wrote a piece about this years ago on my old site Backyard Banter. The piece is still up if people wanted to go find it, but basically people get really hung up on it because as humans, we're very biased to overrate negative events, especially when you see them. And my God, we all watched the Steelers offense on primetime games last year, like constantly. And there was at least one bad Deontay Johnson drop was coming. But year over year, drops are not a sticky stat. Even like a guy like AJ Brown, who I just talked about, he's got a lot of really bad drops on his record, but we just don't remember them as much as we remember Deontay Johnson's, because they came in bunches in primetime games. And again, like good players can drop the ball. ball, but if they're getting a ton of volume as Johnson got last year, it doesn't really matter to the bottom line. I think, he's an awesome player. He's another one that's going to hit reception perception next week. I think people will be excited to see his profile as well. That'll be a fun one. And, I think he does have some legitimate reasons why people should be a little concerned in fantasy because, there's a chance the Steelers offense might stink because Ben might be dust. Like, I thought Ben would retire after we saw him crying at the end of that playoff game. I thought it was over for Ben Roethlisberger, but he comes back. We'll see. I know he's giving out quotes now about basically how his arm, paraphrasing here, but arm never really felt right. Couldn't really zip the ball like he wanted to because of the injury and all that stuff. We'll see. We'll see if he's better this year coming off of that. I don't know, but they've also got offensive line questions. But I would say right now that Deontay Johnson is for sure the best receiver in Pittsburgh and should lead the team in targets again. So it just is like, are they going to throw the ball as much as they did last year? Because they obviously add a new running back in Najee Harris, who also should command some targets. So I think for the risk reward part of it, not because of Deontay Johnson as a player, but because of the situation he's in, I think he's like appropriately priced in fantasy right now. Like I mentioned earlier, he's in that sort of 50th overall range where you're looking at him around names like Ayuk or T. Higgins or like Kenny Galladay, Cooper Kupp. He's kind of in that range for me.
Perfect. Talking about fantasy and how the finals, the games that tell us one or a few moments that you come to your mind that happened some sort of fantasy miracle for you when you were like down by 60 something, and you had some sort of Alvin Kamara in your starting line. So,
I feel like I usually, if you go through like my history of fantasy, I probably have more of the other kind, like being on the other end of that. But maybe that's just like an internal bias type of thing. But I'll tell you, there's no doubt that this year at the end of the season, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs won me some games a lot on their own. I was happy to be ahead of the market on Josh Allen, ahead of the market on Stephon Diggs, because I believed in Diggs as a player that much. I believed that he could jump into this offense and elevate from year one. I thought that Josh Allen wasn't getting enough credit for, not that he wasn't getting enough credit, but people were not sort of adjusting for the fact that this guy, sure, he did not look good from a passing metrics perspective in his first two seasons, but the fact that he was going from, like, we're talking about a player as a rookie who was playing with Kelvin Benjamin, who's playing as a tight end for the Giants right now. What is that about? Zay Jones, who caught fewer than 40% of his passes as a rookie, and like LaShawn McCoy. Those were his top three receivers. And then in 2020, he was going to line up with Stephon Diggs, who I knew was a stud, John Brown, who I've always liked, and Cole Beasley. Like, that's a dramatic upgrade. That's a huge difference between, so I was willing to imagine that Josh Allen could be pretty good. So I had a ton of those two guys stacked together. So they had one game, I think it was against the Patriots, sort of the end of this year, that really helped kind of get me over the top in a few leagues there.
Nice. Yeah, I had Allen in a couple of leagues too, and they helped me a lot, except for once that Titans game was in.
Oh yeah,
going to be cancelled or not because of the COVID situation, and I was like, okay, I'll put him in the bench because it was the last game of the week or something like that, and they ended up playing, and I lost for 5 points. Well,
weird year, right? Like,
exactly.
I will not miss like making lineup decisions based on like, we'll see if this guy's even playing, like you said, last game of the week, like we'll see. I like mentioned to you guys before that we got started, I was charting Marquise Brown, and it was really reminding me, like, man, how many of these Ravens games were totally screwed up because of COVID. Like, they were the team that I think was, and I know the Steelers players had feelings about this, having to play that. Remember they played that Wednesday game with RG3, and it was like, oh man, we don't need to. I appreciate you, Robert, but we don't need to see that anymore.
Exactly.
Hey Matt, you said you trusted Stephon Diggs last year because you really liked him as a player, and this year you said you're ahead of the curve when it comes to Kenny Galladay because he's also a good player. By that same logic, would you say you're way ahead of the curve on Odell Beckham Jr.? I mean, he's probably one of the best wide receivers ever charted on reception perception.
You're right. Listen, I actually haven't done Beckham's 2020 2020 season yet, so don't hold me to this take completely. But really, what I was going into thinking last year was almost exactly what you're saying. Like his early years in reception perception were some of the best. I mean, if you're a sicko subscriber to the website, you're able to look at historical data every season that I've ever charted. And if you go there to like success rate versus man, success rate versus press, and you filter through some of the best seasons, you're going to see a lot of early career Odell Beckham because he was that good. I mean, I'm talking like a legendary 99th percentile, 98th percentile separator versus man and press coverage in his early years. But his first season, his 2019 season in Cleveland, he dropped way down to like a 68th percentile player, just not the same guy. So 2020, I feel like, again, I haven't put that season through reception perception yet. He's going to be one of the players added to the site at the beginning of July. So it's coming pretty soon here. Up, like I said, a lot of time left, a lot of players left to chart. But I'm really interested to see how he turns out, because I do think there's every reason to buy back in on him as a player. I mean, look, because of how good he was, like you said, early on in his career in reception perception, I'm probably going to always give the benefit of the doubt to can he become that guy again? But we just haven't seen it yet with him and Baker. But I think that a lot of the Baker Mayfield is better without Odell Beckham chatter is more like just coincidence than anything else. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Beckham is a real big difference maker in this offense that I think started to find itself towards the end of last year, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Beckham being there or not.
So you said that Beckham had a 99, 98, 90 lots in your concept when it comes to the metrics behind reception perception. So can you explain us a little bit the concept behind a few at least about reception perception, and in this case specifically when it comes to Beckham, about his injury? What do you take for account when it comes to injuries?
Yeah, so first question being the first one that you asked, like basically, so what reception perception is for anyone who's not familiar with it, which I probably should have explained this at the start, like for anyone that's new. Reception perception is the methodology that I came up with to better evaluate wide receivers, like I mentioned earlier, to remove them from the variables of their surroundings. Like every stat that you could think of, like every standard stat for wide receivers is influenced by the quarterback, by the offensive line giving the quarterback enough time, by the play caller putting them in a good position to win with their own strengths, everything like that. But even just the quarterback variable is a huge one, right? We know that when it comes to wide receivers. So over an 8-game sample for NFL players and college players, I go in and chart every single route that they run, how often they get open on each route, how often they run each route type, how often do they beat man, zone, press, whatever. And I've been doing that since 2014. So I have over 300 players in the database right now, and obviously many more coming over the next few months. So yeah, basically it's trying to evaluate wide receivers with the one thing that they can control, which is how often do they get open? How often do they run good routes? Trying to quantify what we always hear about with route running and everything like that. So that's the main goal. That's how the metrics are accumulated by just me watching games with the same system for the last 7, 8 years now. Trying to keep players within that mold, and I think it's proven out to be a very successful way to evaluate players. With Beckham and injuries in particular, I think that injuries could perhaps explain why he's fallen from a 99th percentile player to a little bit lower down the mark, because you do see some players, I think famously, one of the biggest example was Des Bryant. He was a guy who, he's never like a great detailed, nuanced route runner or anything like that, but he was such a physically imposing freak show that he was still able to put up really good numbers in reception perception in the role that they had him. But then you looked at the season, I think it was a 2017 season, right before he was released by Dallas. And I mean, I worked at NFL Network at the time. Every NFL Network segment was, where's Des Bryant going to go now that he's been cut by the Cowboys? And I'm wanting to get on these shows and point at his reception perception chart and be nowhere, because he doesn't get open anymore. He's lost that step. So Beckham obviously has not fallen that dramatically, but he has fallen a decent amount. So I kind of, like I said, I want to go back and look at that 2020 season before really knowing for sure. But there is a chance that he has just declined a little bit as a player, which wouldn't be that surprising considering how many lower body injuries he has sustained to this point.
Perfect. When you said you had 300 players in your database, and a lot more will be coming soon. So I would like you to pick a few of the rookies this year. Which one do you think is amazing? Is a bit different from everything that you said before. Of course, we have Chase is just a beast, for example.
Yeah.
But besides him, other guys such as Elijah Moore, Devonta Smith, and so goes on.
Yeah, the two guys I really loved pre-draft were Rashad Bateman and Elijah Moore, as you mentioned. I mean, starting with Elijah Moore, 95th percentile success rate versus man coverage, really ran a ton of routes and won at every single level of the route tree. I think this guy's explosive. I think he profiles as a very similar player to like a Tyler Lockett or a Doug Baldwin, someone that you put in the slot but wins vertically, isn't just a pop gun slot receiver like the guy they have now in Jamison Crowder. So I'm very excited about him. And Bateman, I do think, again, going back and looking at Marquise Brown right now, and I still think Marquise Brown's a pretty good player, but he's not a number one receiver, and he's not a guy that wins over the middle in breaking routes, the tough physical stuff that Lamar Jackson really throws the best. Those over the middle routes really are where Lamar wins. I think he's a very good fit in this offense. I know obviously there's a ton of fantasy managers that are freaking out about the fact that there's not a lot of passing volume, and I think that's a legit concern. We'll see if Greg Roman is going to open things up. I think Roman has kind of gone stale a little bit as a play caller over his last 3 stops. At this point, it's kind of, you get to a point with Greg Roman where you start to wonder if he's the one holding them back. That happened in San Francisco. It happened in Buffalo. I think we're starting to see the beginnings of that for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So I don't know if they're going to be opened up to the point where Rashad Bateman's going to have a great rookie season or whatever, but I do think from a real life on the field perspective, I think he's a really good fit for what the Ravens needed.
Perfect. So one last question before we go to our second raffle. Pick some sophomore. Yeah, I think 1 year. The next one. Yeah, you guys have the different kind of junior, sophomore, and senior. Yeah. So pick someone from there was a rookie last year that you really enjoy, and the one that you didn't expect to grow in the rookie season, and he just exploded, for example.
Yeah, I think this is the same guy for both answers, which is Brandon Ayuk. Subscribers will know about this already. They'll have seen this on the reception perception profile page, just how good Brandon Ayuk was as a rookie. And to your second point there, it was really unexpected for me. Not that I didn't like Brandon Ayuk coming into the league. I think he offered a lot of really good qualities. I thought he would be, especially when he got to San Francisco, he would be more of an in-space yak threat, a guy that wins after the catch, but very similar to how a lot of folks thought AJ Brown would come into the NFL and he would be a big slot receiver because that was where he played as a collegiate player at Ole Miss. But AJ Brown came into the league and he was like a number one true outside X receiver that made big plays against press coverage on the outside. Brandon Ayuk basically did that same thing where, again, people like me and others thought he would be more of a yak threat and more of a sort of like Golden Tate, Deebo Samuel type of player. He came in and was immediately like a true outside, excellent route runner, like excellent separation numbers and reception perception. I'm very, very excited about him in that 49ers offense. And I'm like, all right, let's see what this team looks like with Trey Lance. I think it could be pretty exciting.
Perfect. So I'll give the word to Sérgio, and he'll continue with the raffle. Vai lá, Sérgio.
É com o Ruizão aí, vamos lá, Ruizão.
Nós de novo. Vamos mostrar aqui de novo, sorteador. Atenção.
Todo mundo colocou o nome aí, né? Já os comentários.
Isso. Ainda chegou mais um agora. Vamos acrescentar também. Vamos pegar aqui o nosso vencedor.
Vai ver se dá sorte aí.
A galera que tá chegando.
Agora pela assinatura semestral, né?
Agora a assinatura semestral. A galera vai gostar. Atenção. É o Jane. Jane, fã do futebolista. Nosso amigão aí. Vai ganhar assinatura semestral. Vai ver muita estatística aí.
Beleza. Go on there. You asked about the rookies and the second year wide receivers, and let's talk about the veterans, the other wide receivers that we think that will explode this year, that will be good draft. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's look, the receiver position right now is so crowded. There's just so many good players. When we're talking about some of these younger guys, I think Deontay Johnson's a good bet for being on this same sort of path that we're talking about with like Calvin Ridley, where there's a chance he could have some sort like a Stephon Diggs season if the targets all intersected. But I don't know that we're really going to see that in Pittsburgh with how many other good receivers they have right now. But, one player that I do really have my eye on this year, and longtime fans of Reception Perception will not be surprised that I'm still excited about Allen Robinson. Like, we're finally going to get Allen Robinson with a quarterback that we're all excited about. See, look, everybody here is shaking their head because we're all excited about it.
Absolutely.
Everyone's excited about it. Like, this is finally probably this is going to happen, right? At some point we were all hoping that we would line up Allen Robinson with a quarterback that we're excited about, someone that we're gassed up for, and I think we're finally going to get it this year. And Robinson has gone from being a really, really good player in reception perception to being like one of the absolute elite guys against both man and press coverage. So like, yeah, give me 17 games now. I got to get used to that. It's going to take forever. 17 games. Give me 17 games with Justin Fields at quarterback. I don't need to see like Andy Dalton for 3 weeks to start the season or something like that. throw the rookie out there and let's get these two guys building a chemistry.
Yes. Everybody who sees Allen Robinson do what he does with Trubisky will be excited with Justin Fields and him, I think.
Exactly.
As you can see, I'm a Packers fan. I don't love the Bears, but I must love the man,
Yes. See, listen, you guys have had it good for a long time, okay? You guys had it good for a long time. Let the Bears have this one thing, just one thing. That's it. They're still not going to be that good of a team, but let's let them have one thing where they get Justin Fields and Allen Robinson firing off. And I mean, maybe it'll keep Allen Robinson in Chicago. Maybe it won't. He was franchised this year. Even if he has like a huge season with Justin Fields, I still wouldn't be surprised if he still tries to hit the open market based on, the salary situation of that team. They're still not in great shape there. So it could just be one shining moment in the sun and then, let the Bears burn down again one more time. I don't care.
So, talking about the Packers, what do you think about Aaron Rodgers' evil twin, Amari Rodgers, as a rookie? Yeah. And what do you think will happen with Aaron Rodgers? If he's going to stay, he's going to leave, he's going to the Broncos, the Raiders, or whatever.
Don't say Denver Broncos.
Yeah, no, look, the longer that this thing goes on, the more I think that Aaron Rodgers will just be back in Green Bay. Is probably what I'd bet on right now. I think he'll be, at least for this year. Like, I don't know that there's any chance he's back there next year. Like, I think this bridge might burn too hard, but for the time being, I think he comes back for 2021. Yeah. No, I think he's back there. That's probably the assumption. And as far as Amari Rodgers goes, look, I know that he's probably just going to be another sort of punchline and like, the Packers haven't done enough at wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers or whatever. But I think Amari Rodgers is good. Like, I think he's not an outside receiver. He's not a future number one receiver. But the fact that they specifically targeted a player like this, and what I mean by that is, this coaching staff, Matt LaFleur and those guys have used Tyler Ervin, like a old running back for the Texans. They've used, they even signed Tavon Austin at one point last year. They've always wanted someone to be that jet sweep pre-snap motion guy that can be sort of this team's version of a Randall Cobb type player. I think Amari Rodgers can be that. Like, he can get open versus zone coverage and he has really good hands. That's about it, right? Like, I mean, he's not going to win vertical passes down the field. He's not going to, make huge plays after the catch, but I do think he's crafty. I think he's smart, and he can win against zone coverage, which is basically all you're asking for from a pre-snap motion and slot receiver type of guy. I am actually kind of excited about him in that role.
Hey Matt, let's talk sleepers. On previous years, we saw you giving a lot of love to Curtis Samuel and even to Rashard Higgins, who is a deeper sleeper.
Deeper. That's a deeper cut.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask you, who is this year's Curtis Samuel? I mean, who is your guy this year?
That's a good question. I'll be honest, I haven't found like someone that I'm, crazy excited about, like that's going, as wide receiver 40, that it could end up being a top 30 guy. And that was, Curtis Samuel last year was like a top, like he was like basically left for dead, and ends up turning in a top 30 season in PPR. I don't know that there's somebody like that for me just yet, but I would bring up guys like I've already talked about with a player like Brandon Ayuk, who I think he's people are pretty excited about him already. He's someone that I think is in a really good position that could really take that next step. I would say a couple other guys that are sort of later round and are definitely on my radar. Michael Pittman with the Colts, I think is a little underrated right now. Last year they had him running a lot of slants, a lot of crossing routes, a lot of digs over the middle of the field, because I think stylistically that fit with the version of Phillip Rivers that we've got right now. But I think there's a chance that with Carson Wentz, if Carson Wentz is properly rehabilitated by this Colts coaching staff, there's a chance that Michael Pittman could be more of a vertical receiver, which I think is really kind of the strength of his game, if we're thinking about him as a player. So he's someone that I think I'm excited about this year. I would be I'd expect him to lead the Colts in receiving this year. And if this offense is good, which I think there's a chance it could be, because I really like Frank Reich as a coach. Like, he's a guy that could have a breakout season for sure.
Fantasy wise, what do you expect the changes to happen with the buying the week 14? Because we have now one more week, and just it's not more 0-16. No, it would be 0-17.
I tell you the truth, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of with everybody else where I have no idea how this is going to go with changes in the league this year. It's going to kind of be an experimental season, I think, for fantasy. And for me, I think that you still should have your playoffs before the end of the season, everything like that. And the buys in week 14, it's going to be, I don't know about you guys. I never try to make too many decisions based off bye weeks. I try to never make any draft day decisions based on bye weeks, because so much could change, especially by week 14. Your entire roster is going to look different than the team you drafted. So I would say for now, like, don't get too caught up on it, like making or breaking draft decisions for you.
Perfect. What's your hype, or what's your expectation regarding Justin Jefferson? He rocked last year, so he will continue or he will decline?
Oh, well, I love this player. He's a 96th percentile player against press coverage. He was awesome. I think he basically had Odell Beckham's rookie season without all of the hype, because of, the primetime catches against the Cowboys and, all that type of stuff. And playing for the New York Giants is very different than playing for the Minnesota Vikings, just based on hype and market wise. But I think he's that good. I think he's true number one receiver level good. Legit could potentially develop into an elite receiver. So I think I think he's just on that rocket ship up. I'm excited about Justin Jefferson. It's tough at the I was talking about this with folks in the Reception Perception Discord the other day. It's tough to decide between AJ Brown, Calvin Ridley, and Justin Jefferson right now, because I'm so excited about all three of those players. And I'm talking redraft and dynasty. I'm excited for all three of those players. I think they're all going to have, awesome 2021 seasons. And I'm excited. I think their long-term arrow is clearly pointing up. That's probably some of the hardest ties to break right now. I think that Jefferson, is probably in the least desirable situation of the three players, but could also easily be the best player of those three, even though I think AJ Brown's right up there with him too. So for me, yeah, I got no worries about Justin Jefferson. I think he's on that clear cut upward trajectory.
Perfect. Now the most difficult question, so be prepared.
Okay.
What do you know? Tell us anything you know about Brazil. See, that's a really tricky one.
What do I know? Almost nothing. Although I'll say this: I always want to learn. And across up the street here in the town I live in, El Segundo, which is part of LA County, right across the street from where we live, we met the owner of a tap room that's opening up there. That's all like the chef is a Brazilian native, so he's a very like it's supposed to be that Brazilian style cuisine, everything like that. So and obviously it'll be the part owner is running the bar part of it as well. So I'll tell you what, I'm excited to learn about the food, and I would love to learn anything you guys could tell me because I'm excited.
You should try it. You should try Brazilian cuisine someday, and remember us for recommending it.
I will remember that as I'm hopefully throwing back a few beers and enjoying some good food right across the street from me. It'll be very convenient.
So
let me see. Let's start. Rui, to prepare everybody to the last raffle. I know that everybody is excited to the last raffle, the Spotting Scotch Fish Bowl, and everybody can do comments.
Oh yeah!
If you didn't do a comment until now, you can do. And let's talk a little bit more to prepare to the last raffle. Okay?
Perfect. Right. One curiosity regarding Brazil and the NFL is that Brazil is the third country that most watches NFL, only behind the US and Mexico. And we have a few projects. And last time I read that we might in the near future have a few games here in Brazil because we have a few in London. In Wembley, in Wembley, and then they have next year probably we'll have a few in Germany, and then we have in the near future some places here in Brazil. So, what do you think about this away games in a way?
I love it. Listen, I think that growing the game is good in every circumstance, right? I think getting more eyeballs, especially from outside the U.S. On the game is a good thing, and as many people can become because. I don't know. I mean, football's a fun sport. It brings people together. Like, look at us right now. We have no business knowing each other. We have no business knowing like you five and me and everyone out here listening and watching. We have no reason to know each other that we exist in this world. But here we are. And I think the game brings us together and connects us in that way. And so more people finding their way to that experience, I'm all in favor of it. And I think the players can learn to adjust with if there's any scheduling parts of it as well. And in the end, more people, more revenue, more for the players. So, and I'm always pro players getting that bag. So in the end, I think it works for everybody.
Perfect.
Matt, let me ask you something. What player is your pride, the player that you were always high because of reception perception and everybody was so low, and then the player exploded and you were right and everybody was wrong?
Well, I would say that obviously Allen Robinson is like the first big breakout call of the series. And I always and I've gotten to know Allen through, media connections, stuff like that. So I'm happy to have been able to tell him in real life, thank you for being great so that I can be great. That's what matters here. But I would say that the two guys who I caught the most grief for was being early on hyping up Tyler Lockett in 2016. He didn't really have that kind of big season until 2018. So sorry, haters, for that one. And I would say Curtis Samuel, who we brought up earlier, is another player that I was hyped on him going into 2019. Yeah, I was hyped up from him. Exactly. Was not expecting him to play with Kyle Allen for as long as he was. I was expecting a healthy Cam Newton, and maybe that's on me for that. But I think 2020 showed you just the beginning of what he could do as a player. I think he's going to have an awesome season in Washington. So yeah, I still think that was a good call, and was happy to be early on those two guys. So listen, sometimes reception perception is very rarely wrong, but sometimes it can be early. So those two times were good examples of I caught a lot of grief for those two players for a couple of years, but I think we're in good spots with both of them now.
Perfect.
Matt, which QB is the QB that brought more anger for you when you watch the film and your guy is always open and the QB never passes the ball to him? Which one is the worst in this matter?
Oh, there's been a lot of them through the years. I've spent a lot of time. I mean, Trubisky's up there, but I think, listen, the guy who's on my radar right now is actually Jimmy Garoppolo, because let me tell you, there's so many times that Brandon Ayuk is running open downfield. And I mean, even he does, like, and this is how I always knew, like, Stephon Diggs did not like playing with Kirk Cousins for this same reason. And Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, kind of the same sort of archetype of quarterbacks. Like, there are so many times Stephon Diggs would be running open downfield, like throw his hands up when Kirk Cousins just takes his first read check down. And Jimmy Garoppolo is doing that same thing with Brandon Ayuk last year. So, again, I'm excited for the Trey Lance show at this point, because I'm not trying to have a repeat of that this year.
And running backs, let's talk just a little about the running backs.
Do we have to?
What the second year running backs that you think that will be second or third year that will be good this year?
Yeah, I mean, that was a good running back group last year. I'm still really high on Antonio Gibson. I drafted a lot of him last year, but this is not an original take because he's going high in drafts right now. But I'm trying to be as ahead of the market as possible on Cam Akers. I am very excited about him. You know, I think I could end up slotting him as like a top 5 running back this year. I know that's aggressive. It's a sort of a bold prediction, maybe let's say bold-ish prediction. But that offense, I think, is going to be awesome with Stafford. I think they're going to be able to really attack like every level of the field, which they clearly could not do with Jared Goff. And I think Akers sort of cemented as the top guy there. He could have an awesome season. Although I don't mind, like, if you're playing best ball, whether you take Akers or not, I don't mind taking a late round stab on Darrell Henderson too, because if Akers was to ever get hurt, I think Henderson is still a pretty good back as well. So Akers is a guy, second year back going in this year, that I'm really excited about for sure.
Very good.
Hey Matt, this is dynasty season, and here in Brazil there are a lot of startups happening right now. So I feel like this is a good time to ask you, who are your highest owned players in dynasty?
Oh, it's Diggs for sure. It's Diggs and it's probably Diggs and Anthony Miller. So let's ignore that last one. Yeah, I had a lot of hope for Anthony Miller. We'll see. Maybe he'll be another one that I was early on. I doubt it though. I don't think that's going to. But yeah, no, it's definitely 100%. It's 100% Diggs. I've basically every dynasty team I've ever had, he's been a part of.
Well, I know I'm getting some Anthony Miller right now that you said it. So let's hope it breaks out. It
should be free. You should get it for free. So that's good. That's good.
Very much. So,
as such a wide receiver guru, what do you think about the zero RB strategy?
I think it's viable. It's basically it's easier to do in like standard redraft management leagues where you've got to actually make lineup decisions, and you could form that really strong team at the end of the season. But it's definitely viable, and I know for myself, I've employed it before for sure.
And let's talk again about reception. I want you to talk about this and how people can subscribe and where do they find the site. Talk about reception. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you've liked what you've heard so far, you want to get a little more, and there's so much more that you will get with the site. Just go to receptionperception.com. It's the easiest place to find it. Obviously, if you want to see some, sneak previews or whatever, you can use the hashtag receptionperception on Twitter. I'm obviously always tweeting that out as well. But yeah, everything is on receptionperception.com. We've got sortable tables full of every player that's going to get charted this year. The highest tier of subscribers can get access to every single player ever charted over the last since 2014. And basically, I'm trying to have something for everybody. Whether you want to be that type of subscriber, you want to get everything, or if you're just like a redraft player, you want to throw $20 at the site to get access to just the profiles this year. And like, okay, Matt really likes this guy. Cool, I'm in. Let's draft him this year. There's something for everybody with the site. So receptionperception.com is where everything is.
Very good.
Perfect. Vamos continuar. Vai ter agora o sorteio, Rui?
Alguém tem alguma pergunta de vocês? Mas vamos ver se tem alguma pergunta aqui do pessoal, no público. Sérgio, aí algum comentário interessante?
Hey, Matt, what is the importance you give to strength of schedule when analyzed to a player in redraft leagues?
It just, not as much. I think it matters when you're projecting like team level success, which definitely has an impact on obviously player projection, everything like that. Like if you think, the Steelers have a really hard schedule this year, so are they really going to be able to pull off this whole we want to run the ball more? I think that's the type of stuff where you can sort of make tweaks to your own projections, your own individual projections on certain players based on that type of stuff. But when it comes to like this receiver has a really hard slate of passing game matchups or whatever, I'm not really using that to break too many ties in favor or against players when drafting.
And what about the playoffs strength of schedule? Do you see that? Do you take a look at that, or you ignore it?
No, way too far in advance, I think, to make like accurate projections. We really don't know as much as we think we do going into a season. So, last year there was a chance that people would have thought that, the 49ers were going to be a really tough matchup, but they were so broken and, they were still pretty decent defense by the end of the year, but they were so banged up. It was hard to really project them as that unit going into the season. And that happens plenty of times. And just overall defensive performance can be very variable year to year. The Bills are a good example of a team that most people would have thought would have been a top level defense last year, but they were sort of just a middle of the road unit for most of the season.
And how do you use game script in fantasy football?
Yeah, I mean, that's everything. With game script, you're going to want to look at when with the Vegas lines, everything like that, projected winners, losers, everything. I think that's crucial. You don't want to. It's good to sort of, especially if you're playing daily fantasy and you want to stack players up, right? You want to stack a quarterback and a wide receiver. You want to bring it back with someone that they're playing against. That's definitely a smart strategy. And, sort of if that receiver is going to be in negative game script, they're going to get a lot of targets. The only spot where you can start to get in trouble with that is you don't want a quarterback in negative game script because they could be taking sacks, throwing interceptions, trying to catch up, everything like that. So I'm good with using it for pass catchers, but not as much when it comes to quarterbacks. You want to go for efficiency over volume with quarterbacks.
Hey, Matt, I have a question about reception perception methodology. I mean, when a receiver faces really good cornerbacks in a row, for example, if Allen Robinson faces Gilmore and then Tre'Davious White and then another good corner, he'll naturally win less routes. How do you adjust for that? What games do you select when charting a player and everything?
Yeah, so I always try to mix up difficult matchups theoretically versus and then some lighter ones too. So I try to get a good mix when sampling games. But I'll tell you, like for the most part, like receivers that are good at getting open, they'll get open versus good corners too. So I haven't noticed a ton of like fluctuation in the data just based on matchups. Like maybe I could dig deeper into that, but so far since 2014, as long as I've been doing this, I have not noticed that as much.
Nice to hear. Nice to know.
Well, Sérgio.
One more question.
Okay.
Is there players in today's ADP that you believe is so valuable that you end up drafting in every league?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, no. I don't have like one guy right now at this point where I'm like drafting him on every single team. I also try to limit, I try to just vary up my exposure to players like that too. It's not as if I think that I can't, I'm obviously I'm confident in my ability to project players and everything like that, but you want to leave some room for variance, some room for injuries, everything like that. So that's really the big thing. I will tell you the value on Tyler Lockett, I think is good this year. I think I'm going to be tempted to draft him basically everywhere this year, simply because good player. I think he gets too much of a bad rap for like inconsistency or whatever. The fall off that he sort of had at the end of the season, DK Metcalf experienced the same type of thing, but doesn't get nearly as much of a ding in this year's ADP. So Lockett's a guy I think for like the 20th year in a row I'm going to draft a ton of.
Yeah, and now look at skyrocket.
The price of Lockett now in the ADP is very good, don't you think?
And
the
after
price of Lockett in the ADP.
And after the live, the ADP will just skyrocket. I'm pretty sure about that. So just open your apps and just draft him right now.
Yeah, do it now.
Yeah, exactly. Stop everything. Just do that.
And what kind of strategy do you use to draft? Is this zero RB or not?
No, I mean I try to mix it up. I try to keep it an open mind. I never go into a draft thinking like I have to use this strategy or I have to draft like this player or anything. I try to be sort of an open-minded person when it comes to drafting. regardless, it also depends on where you end up drafting, like within the round. Like, are you the back half of the first round? Are you near the turn? Are you near the top? It does kind of depend on that more than we want to admit, honestly.
Very good. We can go on. Let's do the raffle that people are waiting a lot here today.
It's the Scottish Bowl. It's the Scottish Bowl raffle. So that Matt knows, we're raffling an entry to Scottish Bowl. So people are really, really excited to be
awesome.
Yeah.
People are so excited that we left.
And here it is.
Rui, você quer matar o pessoal do coração.
It's just a little.
He wants to give a heartbreak to everybody.
Só aquele suspense de leve. Aqui os nomes de novo, a gente acrescentou mais alguns aqui, a galera que foi chegando e comentando. E vamos lá, agora é a vaga no Scott Fishbowl. Tulhão. O maior comissário do Brasil, Túlio César, vai jogar com a gente. Merecidíssimo, viu, Tulhão? Merecidíssimo, velho. Você é um cara diferenciado. Parabéns.
Brazilian Scott Fish is going to the Scott Fish Bowl. He's Brazil's greatest commissioner. He's Brazil's greatest commissioner. So earned it.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Matt. So, what do you think of Deshaun Watson's situation? Do you believe he's gonna play any game this season? And in the case he plays, how do you see Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth, man. I mean, I have no idea when it comes to Watson. I feel like it would be sort of irresponsible to speculate, but at this point, I don't think he's ever playing for the Texans again. That's what I'll say. Like, whether it's this situation or the fact that he does not want to play there anymore, like even if nothing happens with the with the commissioner's exempt list or whatever, with everything that's going on with him from a legal perspective, I would be stunned if he ever plays another snap for the Texans again, just because he's already kind of made it clear he does not want to play there.
Yeah.
Okay, we have about 1 hour more of our live. Go on, Derek.
Sure. So we'll firstly would like to thank you very much for having us here and accepting the invitation and talk with us for almost 1.5 hours or something like that. Sorry in advance. So yeah. I'd say that's the problem. We go everything goes accordingly except for the last part. Just line the finish line is just screwed up. So
hey, I appreciate you guys for having me. This has been awesome. This was a lot of fun. You guys are great. You have good listeners and a lot of good questions from you guys and from the crowd.
Thank you.
It's very good. It's a pleasure, Matt, to have you here. I talk about this from the Brazilian audience, the Brazilian fans. We know your work. I said about a lot of years since I think that I am your friend since 2015, I think. And it's very good to have you here, man. And I hope that we have you here another time again to talk a lot more about fantasy, to talk about a lot of things. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
and,
I would love to.
I have one last question.
Okay.
I said to you before that your manifest is the thing that made me your real big fan. Who doesn't know, he has a manifest that is in his Twitter about the change of lifestyle that he did some years ago. And how do you think that it inspires your life in your life with fantasy? I don't know if anyone asked you about this, and I hope that everybody read your manifest. That's very good.
Yeah. I wrote a story about how I lost over 100 pounds. It's my pinned tweet. I used to be 320 pounds. I am not that anymore. It's impacted every part of my life. And I would say this from the angle of like fantasy, or which I think about a lot of stuff when it comes to like getting healthy and eating right and working out and being physically active. Still got to get my workout in at some point today. I haven't done that yet, but I will do it before too long at some point. But I think that thinking about like my life with fantasy and like this job in particular, I think if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have pushed myself to get healthy and to lose the weight, number one, I don't even know like what type of lifestyle I would be living right now. And number two, I feel really confident in myself in terms of like being able to put myself out there, being able to do videos and podcasts and stuff like this with you guys, and put out opinions about players. That's weird, but I feel confident to do that because I have a belief in myself that has inspired because of the journey that I went on. So, I would say to everybody out there, if you are struggling with your weight, with your health in general, you can do it. If you want to make that change, you can get it done. If the person that I was could do it, you can do it. Cause man, I was as lost as it could be. And we figured it out. So there's hope for everybody. That's for sure.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, it's a pleasure to have you here, man. And we hope that you come again very soon.
I would love to. Yes, I would love to.
Our doors are always open for you, man.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Vamos finalizar aí, Derek.
Perfeito. Muito obrigado a todos que estão aqui curtindo aqui com a gente, a live. Parabéns para os ganhadores do sorteio. E apenas para finalizar antes, né? Na próxima live do dia 8, né, nós vamos ter um convidado muito especial, que é o José Ferraz do The Playoffs. Ele vai estar aqui com a gente. A gente vai conversar sobre bastante coisa, com foco mais nos quarterbacks. Então, já se preparem aí, já marca no calendário, deixa a datinha lá bonitinho, que dia 8 tem mais.
Às 20 horas.
Exatamente, às 20 horas.
Beleza. Obrigado, pessoal. É um prazer estar trazendo um cara como esse aqui para vocês. A gente espera que vocês tenham gostado muito, que a gente está muito feliz com essa live. Esperamos que vocês curtam aí o BRF Futebol, acompanhem o trabalho, que a gente tem muito mais para trazer para vocês esse ano. Viu? Muito obrigado. Valeu. Bye, Matt.